Leslie Marshall Show, a true democracy in talk radio. Of, for, and by you, the people.
Mark, I don't hear sound.
Live from our nation's capital, it's Deadline DC
No.
with Brad Bannon.
I hear it.
Welcome. Hi, I'm Brad Bannon. I'm the host of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I'm a national Democratic strategist and pollster, a columnist for The Hill in Washington, D.C., and a political analyst for News Radio KNX in Los Angeles and CTV News. If you want to read my columns in The Hill on the presidential race, the best way to do that is to go to muckrack.com/Brad Bannon. We have two great guests today. In the first half hour, our guest is Mica Soellner, who is the Congressional Reporter for Punchbowl News. Then in the second half hour, our guest is Tara Devlin, host of the TARABUSTER podcast. And of course, we are joined, as always, by my intrepid executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. Before we bring on a first guest, I want to remind you that Mondays on Deadline DC, I bring you the people and players behind the politics and policies that drive our nation forward. To start off the show, we have this clip from Kamala Harris's acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention.
And know this, I will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend our forces and our interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists. I will not cozy up to tyrants and dictators like Kim Jong-un who are rooting for Trump. Because, you know, they know he is easy to manipulate with flattery and favors. They know Trump won't hold autocrats accountable because he wants to be an autocrat himself. And as president, I will never waver in defense of America's security and ideals, because in the enduring struggle between democracy and tyranny, I know where I stand and I know where the United States belongs.
That was Vice President Kamala Harris giving her acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention. Our guest in this half hour is Mica Soellner, who is the Congressional Reporter for Punchbowl News. Mica, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's start with this. You spent the week at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. What was the mood there?
Yeah, I would say the mood was very energetic. A lot of excitement. I think that there was a large swath of coalition for Kamala Harris and support for her. You know, there was a lot of enthusiasm, I think, especially during her speech at certain points, especially when she hit on foreign policy too. I mean, you just played the clip of her, but I do want to say, I would say the biggest applause line was definitely the part where she talked about a potential ceasefire deal in Gaza. I know that's been a big sticking point for the party, and we didn't see as much outside of the convention in terms of demonstrations related to the war and everything going on in the Middle East as was anticipated.
That's curious, because you would thought that at the Democratic National Convention, the delegates there would be most preoccupied with domestic issues, the economy, the environment, and so forth. Why do you think she got such a big response talking about national security policy?
Yeah, it was very interesting. And she went on for a while. And I think it's because, I think that's largely the biggest issue right now hitting Democrats is everything going on in Gaza, and going back to domestic issues. Outside of that, it would be the border and these other issues that Republicans are hammering Democrats on. That's not to say that she didn't touch heavily on domestic issues such as the economy, and she spent a lot of time talking and differentiating herself from Donald Trump. But I would say VP Harris's speech was largely painting herself as a center-left candidate, which she is going to need to do in order to turn and get the voters that she needs in these swing districts who are a little bit more independent-minded, and possibly even some frustrated GOP voters.
On Monday, the convention, the big speaker was President Joe Biden. And it was really a political valedictory, talking about his departure from the candidate scene, his focus on the remaining few months of his presidency. And I imagine it must have been a very good, very difficult speech for the president to give, because essentially he was pushed off the stage. And one of the people listening to the president's speech was Nancy Pelosi, who played a big role in substituting Kamala Harris for President Biden. What was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly, the Democratic National Convention was supposed to be President Biden's convention just roughly 2 months ago, maybe less than. So it's clear that, there's some challenges there, and there was a lot of backroom, issues going on with Biden being at the top of the ticket. And we saw so many in his party asking him and demanding that he step aside in order to save their own chances of flipping the House and keeping the Senate. So there was a lot of worry about that. In terms of Speaker Pelosi's relationship with the president, it's been very interesting to see Biden advisors coming out saying they're not trying to start a fight with her right now. I mean, I think that's telling. And I actually tried to ask President Biden last week when I was out with him if he's spoken with the former speaker, but he didn't answer that question. So this has been a topic that I think has kind of raised a lot of palace intrigue on Capitol Hill and in the Beltway, but I'm not sure how much concern there is outside of DC in terms of their relationship.
Now, do you think the president is going to spend a lot of time in the fall campaigning for his vice president and the rest of the Democratic ticket, or not?
I think it's hard to say, and I think it'll be interesting to see what he does decide to do. He could decide to go quietly, or he could stay involved. But I think as of now, we're seeing, his campaign team has essentially all, transferred over into Kamala Harris's team now. So I think it's just like her show right now at the moment in terms of who's doing what. And I think she's got enough help, via her relationships on the Hill or outside, people that are helping her. I mean, we saw a whole trove of people who are all Team Harris. She has the support of a lot of Hollywood elites and, other people that have raised excitement about her. So I really, to be honest, I'm not sure what the president is going to do, but I really don't think that she would even need his help.
Now, you cover the House of Representatives for Punchbowl News. It's interesting that even though she's not Speaker anymore, she's Speaker Emerita, she still obviously yields a lot of power in the House of Representatives and nationally in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no objecting to the power and the influence that Nancy Pelosi continues to have on the House of Representatives and also Democratic Party at large. I mean, she is a significant figure that has such a strong level of influence, and she's been in the shadow of Hakeem Jeffries too, as he takes the reins and the new generation of Democratic leaders step up. So she's still very much in the shadows, and her opinion carries a strong weight.
Okay, and let me ask you this question. There were several former Republican representatives speaking at the Democratic National Convention. I remember one or two Democrats who spoke at the Trump convention, but they seem to have a pretty good turnout of former Republicans. Do you think that will have an impact on the fall campaign?
I think it's interesting. I actually asked the same question to Democratic Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar about what he thought of these speakers, and he talked about how he was friends with Adam Kinzinger when he was in the House, and he thought, he's hoping that it could have some sway on some of these voters that see someone within the Republican Party going out against Donald Trump. But I'm going to add that a lot of these people have already been vocal against Trump for a long time, and they've been largely rejected by the Republican Party as well. So they will have zero sway on the base. I think I can say that with pretty much any clarity. They may impact one or
We're
two.
going to have to go to take a short break for our radio listeners. Our guest in this half hour is Mica Soellner, congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. We'll be right back right after this very quick message for our viewers on YouTube and Facebook.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes?
Fine.
She may not be having.
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Mica Soellner, congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. Mica, again, you cover Congress for Punchbowl News, and a couple of months ago, while Joe Biden was still the designated Democratic nominee, many House Democratic members were not particularly enthusiastic about his presidential candidacy. Is it true? There seems to be an upsurge in enthusiasm among Democratic House members now that Kamala Harris is riding high. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say that there's been a significant shift in the House, particularly among these vulnerable Democrats that were worried that Biden would bring them down uh, and have a strong down ballot impact. But, I think that we also need to remember that right now, Harris is still relatively new. She still has a few more months to make her case and lay out her policy vision to the American people. And we'll see what happens there. I mean, there could be some opposition, and not every single Democrat that was opposed to Biden has backed Harris, especially these most vulnerable House members, in Washington State and Alaska, and then Jared Golden in Maine as well.
And Senator John Tester, who was a very difficult reelection campaign in Montana, also did not attend the convention, I believe.
Yes, it was interesting to see the approach from these in-cycle Senate Democrats, I would say, because you mentioned Tester. Sherrod Brown of Ohio also did not attend. But we saw some people that are facing tougher races actually speak at the DNC on the national stage. So Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, they actually took the stage to make their case in terms of why voters should support Harris. And so it seems like there's a split there in terms of who wants to attach themselves to the top of the ticket and who doesn't.
And the secret seems to be, given the absence of Sherrod Brown and John Tester, that if you're in a red state, you're trying to keep a low profile while the Democrats meet in Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that's very accurate.
Do you think, now I've read a story somewhere today that House Democrats are piling on to campaign with Kamala Harris. In fact, he's actively reached out to them, whereas there wasn't that kind of relationship during while Joe Biden was on the top of the ticket. Do you see that in your observations?
Yeah, I think Kamala Harris is working hard to establish and reassure her relationships on the Hill. I mean, that's been a big change. We heard this from some of the key groups that were supporting Biden before, but raised some concerns. And it's the groups on the Hill, like the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Pacific American. The Asian American caucus. And so, a lot of those chairs said that Kamala Harris actually called them the day after that she announced her presidential run to make sure that she, has their support and what she can do to assure support of those groups and their respective demographics.
Okay, we're going to take another short break to bring back our radio listeners. Our guest in this half hour is Mica Soellner, congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. And I want to welcome back especially our radio listeners. Now, for our radio listeners, if you want to watch us as well as listen to us, you can do that by going to twitter.com/Brad Bannon. At facebook.com/Deadline DC with Brad Bannon /videos, and also on YouTube at youtube.com/Deadline DC. We're back with more of our segment here with Mica Soellner, the congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. Mica, let me ask you this. What are the prospects for Democrats taking back control of the House of Representatives? My reading is, at least in the big picture, looking at the national polls, the race is very close. And usually Democrats need to win the popular vote nationally by 6 or 7 points to take control of the House. What's your take on the race for control of the House?
Yeah, the race is going to be really close. And one thing I'm hearing from members and from my own observations as well is that a lot of these, the control of the House is really going to lay in actually the two bluest states in the nation, New York and California, because they have the most vulnerable seats. And a lot of Republicans right now, based off the last cycle of them being able to take a lot of these open seats and also oust, a few Democrats at the time. So those are two states to definitely watch in terms of how they're playing. In California, I can say that from Democrats I've talked to there, they say that Harris at the top of the ticket will have a impact, and it could definitely sway some of these seats, especially with her long history in the state, as well as her popularity. Being from Oakland and also just her long political career representing California. So that could help them there. So I would say that it's very close, and we'll have to watch some of these key races.
Okay. Now, months ago, well, early this year, when the Republicans were having a very difficult time picking a speaker, and they went through speakers and countless arguments, I wouldn't have thought that they had much of a chance to keep control of the House, which is a observation on not making early judgments before you see things panning out. How have the Republicans recovered from what I would say was fairly inglorious tenure holding control of the House? Is it just anti-Biden sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, things that happened 6 months ago is a lifetime in politics, I would say. So I
Yeah, it
think a lot
sure
of
is.
people's memories are short. Because I thought the same thing, when all of the speaker drama was happening, Republicans are greatly ruining their chances of holding on to the House or expanding their majority. But a lot of that has calmed down, I think, because of the attention that's been on Democrats lately. And also, Speaker Johnson really hasn't had many tests in recent months in terms of having any internal infighting, even with the members of the Freedom Caucus and the hard right faction of the GOP conference. There hasn't been that much uproar in terms of passing another CR, and we may see that again in September. But yeah, as of right now, I think all eyes are on November, and we'll see if Republicans can help themselves, especially Trump, in terms of what he can do by them. But I think that people are kind of laying low and staying quiet, and hopefully letting more drama just kind of be on the rise for the opposing parties.
Now, let me ask you this question. Democrat, if you look at the national polls at least, and I'm sure this is true in a lot of the targeted House races where Democrats are vulnerable, the economy is a big issue because voters are unhappy with the economy. They go to the grocery store every week and they're paying increased ridiculous prices for feeding their families. How do Democrats in marginal House seats how are they trying to cope with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is kind of detaching themselves from the administration and, some of their more unpopular policies. I mean, also just, I think they're focusing on those kitchen sink issues like you mentioned in terms of the economy and inflation, and, making promises, but also saying that they're not afraid to buck the administration where they can in terms of some of these issues that have been, highly unpopular. And that I am also just going to add very quickly that I know that, Harris being a new candidate has, helped some of those in these tough races, but she's also going to have to try and detach herself from policies under her administration alongside President Biden.
Now, back in 2022, the Republican House members were riding high in the early part of the year. Then the Trump-appointed Supreme Court issued their decision in Dobbs, which led to several states, I think about 20 of them actually, enacting very severe restrictions on abortion access. And I think the uproar of the Dodd decision did accounted for a big part of the reason why Republicans didn't win a big majority in the House, and they won a bare majority, which ended up causing them a lot of problems. My question to you is abortion as big an issue in House races as it was in 2022, or has the economy supplanted that?
Yeah, I think abortion is still going to be a big issue, especially when you see some of these more harsher policies enacted in red states like Texas and Florida. So those are going to be a huge play in those states that have already seen actions from Republican administrations further make those restrictions on abortion and reproductive freedoms. I will say that it's also an issue that a lot of Democratic challengers and incumbents are, making in their own races, in certain Senate races, and painting, their opponents as being extreme on abortion. So it's an issue that Republicans have had a hard time grappling with in terms of what the right message is for them. But we've seen a lot of them kind of stay quiet and distance themselves from some of the more extreme measures that have come out of, various states.
Okay, and one last question about House races. So we hear a lot about money, not only the money that the candidates spend, but the money that the big super PACs spend. How are the Republicans and Democrats running for the House fit for money? They're both raising a lot of money. Does one party have dominant financial power over the other?
Yeah, Democrats have a significant fundraising advantage right now. We see the House Democratic campaign arm at least completely outraise the Republican campaign arm in the last few quarters, and I think that's become a big problem for the GOP. We saw NRCC Chair Richard Hudson actually say behind closed doors that this is actually an issue for them. So we're seeing a definite fundraising advantage for Democrats, but we'll see how that money is spent and where that money goes, and if this momentum keeps up as well.
Okay, Mica, thank you very much. Our guest in this half hour was Mica Soellner, political reporter for Punchbowl News. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon and Tara Devlin, the host of the TARABUSTER podcast, right after this very quick break.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mica.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know. He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something was wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
What grows in the forest? Trees? Sure. Know what else grows in the forest? Our imagination, our sense of wonder, and our family bonds grow too. Because when we disconnect from this and connect with this, we reconnect with each other and build family memories we will carry with us forever. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you and start exploring at discovertheforest.org. It's easy. Just put in your zip code to find family-friendly outdoor destinations near you. You'll also find guides to free activities, games, and amazing forest facts. Give the magic of the outdoors to your kids and reconnect with your family. Find a forest near you at discovertheforest.org. That's discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
I've got those Payday Friday grocery store blues. That working class lament is from an old bluegrass song, but millions of working stiffs are singing it today. While many workers have finally seen an uptick in their paychecks, they've been dismayed to see the increase quickly gobbled up by jacked up grocery prices. What the hell? Kamala Harris has had the honesty to call it what it is, gouging. And to put some bite in her bark, she's proposing a long overdue national ban on rip-off pricing by food giants. Of course, this produced outraged squeals by corporate functionaries, but some of the most furious squealing is coming from a supposedly unbiased corner of America's economic structure, economists. A little-known secret of this occult profession is that most economists are schooled by and working for the corporate order, generally hostile to consumers, workers, and other competing interests. One absolute rule they learn is that none of the inequities and iniquities of America's laissez-faire land economy are to be blamed on corporate greed. Thus, a whole pack of mainline economists raced to poo-poo Harris's price gouging charge, asserting that grocery prices have naturally surged due to what they benignly call price pack architecture. Bovine excrement. Price gouging cannot be perfumed by semantics. It is mass swindling, and people can detect it by its stench. So let's follow that stench to its anti-free enterprise source, monopoly. For the past half-century, economists in both Republican and Democratic administrations have looked the other way, allowing food giants to consolidate and conglomerate, shut out competitors, monopolize every aspect of the food economy, and steal. This is Jim Hightower saying it's that theft that Harris is daring to challenge, and Americans will cheer her on no matter how furiously establishment economists squeal.
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, who's been on the show many times. She is the host of the TARABUSTER podcast.
Thank you.
But before we go to Tara, we're going to play this clip from Robert F. Kennedy endorsing Donald Trump, which I'm sure has his two uncles and father spinning in their graves.
I want to say a word about the Ukraine war. The military-industrial complex has provided us with a familiar comic book justification like they do on every war. That this one is a noble effort to stop a supervillain, Vladimir Putin, invading Ukraine and then to thwart his Hitler-like march across Europe. In fact, tiny Ukraine is a proxy in a geopolitical struggle initiated by the ambitions of the U.S. neocons or American global hegemony. I'm not excusing Putin for invading Ukraine. He had other options. But the war is Russia's predictable response to the reckless neocon project of extending NATO to encircle Russia, a hostile act.
Yeah, that was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. endorsing a man which his father and two uncles would have despised.
Right.
And, our guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, host of the TARABUSTER podcast. Tara, this really upset me a lot because I'm old enough that his father, Robert F. Kennedy, was one of my political heroes. And to see his son, endorsing Donald Trump really troubles me. And in fact, I wrote in one of my blogs that he was spitting on his father's grave when he endorsed Trump. Actually, I didn't say spitting. I used another word starting with an S, but they cut that out of the column. But it's very troubling to me. Is this marked decline in American politics or what?
It just seems like the ascendancy of the weird, right? And the kooky. And it's pretty shocking too, because there's so many people that are falling for this. It's kind of convoluted, backward thinking that that he's not faulting Putin for invading Ukraine, but he had no other options or something. Is that something like he said? But
yeah, we forced Putin to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
We forced Putin. NATO forced him. NATO is not I mean, NATO is a peacekeeping alliance. It's not, it doesn't invade other countries. And he shouldn't have to worry. Putin shouldn't have to worry about anyone joining NATO if he had no nefarious designs on illegal invasions, because he invaded Ukraine because Ukraine is a fledgling democracy, and he has no business. It's like Hitler invading Poland, saying that they had to do because that was a response to Poland's aggression, and that's exactly the excuse they used at the time. It's very similar, but his logic is so convoluted and steeped in the conspiracy theories and the sort of right out of the Kremlin's talking points too, because this is what they're saying, that they had no other choice, as if Putin is some kind of victim here too, when he's an autocrat who kills journalists, who kills his opposition, who there is no democracy, and he's no more president than any king is a president. He's just a president in name only. That we're in a time where autocrats are all calling themselves presidents to legitimize their rule, their illegitimate rule, really. But this is not. They go through the pantomime of democracy in Russia, as you know. But he always wins like 90% of the vote, which is ridiculous. But anyway, it's just the fact that he gives legitimacy to this it's really sad too, because it feels like, of course, he's being used as a dupe for the Trump agenda. And the agenda is he's running for president to stay out of jail. I mean, that's really the bottom line. Yeah. So, and he's whatever has to happen. If he has to destroy democracy in the, that's just the collateral damage, really.
Yeah, in some ways, the marriage of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I emphasized the junior, and Donald Trump is a marriage made in hell.
Yeah.
They both espouse the same conspiracy theories, and the most famous one, of course, is the pandemic.
Yes.
And the efforts to vaccinate Americans to protect them against the pandemic is a big no-no in the Kennedy Trump thing. In fact, there are even some rumors, and I don't know if they're true, but nothing surprises me anymore, that if Trump wins, God forbid, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, which is a really scary thought, because God knows what would happen in that circumstance if we had a pandemic.
My God, really? Well, that's part of their Project 2025 agenda, is to make sure that no. Well, first they want to undo the Department of Education, destroy it like anything else, like the administrative state, right? But that's one of the lists. One of the things on the list is that schools will not get any funding if they have mandatory vaccinations. And, this is why the little disinformation that's out there now is why polio is on the ascendancy again in the United States. Measles, mumps, all these diseases we thought were, in the rearview mirror. But I can't even believe it, that polio, we're grappling with polio again in America. Yeah. It's disgusting.
Let me ask you this question, Tara. Is it fair, looking at the two national conventions we've just seen, is it fair to describe the difference between the two conventions as the difference between woke and weird?
Yes, I'd rather be woke than weird, that's for sure. It is weird. They are weird. Like, mind your own business, weirdos. Stop with your...
I didn't buy this weird thing when Democrats started raising it, but as time goes on, it makes more and more sense to me. And let me ask you a question. To many people, woke is a curse word.
Right.
How did that happen?
Yeah, well, it's also, woke stems from the African American community. So that's where it's also tinged with racism. So it's, par for the course that they would try to disparage it. And it's just sad that Democrats and liberals, progressives, and normal people get that they buy into it too. I think when they come for a word like that, we should really put up a resistance to it, because there's nothing wrong. What is being woke? That you're it's just the updated version of PC. How they would say, oh, too politically correct, but that's just their whole thing, is that they don't feel free unless they can scream the N-word without any consequences with that. And that's what they're, really what they have a problem with. They want to be racist. They want to be, bigoted, and they don't want anybody to have a reaction to it. So.
Yeah, it's really weird too, because about a year ago, I forget which national poll it was, but asked people to define or to tell what woke meant to them. And a majority of people, when they heard the word woke, described the word in positive terms, friendly, tolerant, adjectives like that. And one of the things that I find very odd is why when most Americans seem to think it's a good thing to be woke, why Republicans persist in, beating up woke people. And they do every day. I see something in Facebook about, Democrats woke this or woke that or woke the other thing.
Consider it a compliment, really. So
yeah. We're gonna take a break now. For our radio listeners, our guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, host of the TARABUSTER podcast. And when we get back from this short break, we'll continue this with our video listeners on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And we're going to talk about two issues that will play a big deal in the fall campaign. And that would be abortion and economy.
Yep.
We'll be right back with more of Deadline DC and Tara Devlin of TARABUSTER after this message.
There are a ton of social networks
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. We're talking about presidential politics in this segment and in the previous segment with Mica Soellner from Punchbowl. And the first thing I want to talk about, which I also asked Mica, is let's talk about abortion.
Okay.
Now, the national polls are very clear. Most Americans, probably about 2 out of every 3 Americans, favor extensive reproductive rights access for women. After the Dodd decision in 2022, more than 20 states have enacted severe restrictions on abortion access. You think this is it was a big deal in the 22 elections. Right. I think it cost Republicans a big win in U.S. House, yes. And they got this narrow victory, which caused them all sorts of problems. Do you think it will be a big issue in the fall of this election, Tara?
Yeah, it will be. But here's the thing we were discussing off air too. But the Democrats need to frame the abortion issue, and I appreciate what Tim Walz is saying. Mind your own business. That's a great frame. But the other frame is that the fact is abortion does not go down when abortion is criminalized. The abortion rates, I should say. And after the fall of Roe, in fact, the numbers of abortion in the country have gone up. I don't know why Democrats aren't talking about this, because what reduces the abortion rate are economic factors, universal health care, higher education, living wages, retirement, all of those factors, days off. We're the only country that has no maternity and paternity leave. But in countries that have these policies, they have lower abortion rates than in countries where the abortion itself is criminalized. So really, if you are pro-life, whenever a Republican calls himself pro-life, it should be accompanied by a laugh track, frankly, because they're not pro-life. What they're doing is they're just making it unsafe. They're killing women. They're sending women into trauma, and they're traumatizing families. They're just making it worse for people. And the fact is, if women don't, they like to say that, you could come in and have an abortion at the 9th, after 9 months, cuckoo, they talk about weird. Of course, that's not happening. And if there are late-term abortions, it's because there's a problem. Women don't go walking into a doctor's office at 9 months and say, I just carried this 9 months, get it out of me. And then everybody's like, yeah, sure, let's go, right? That doesn't happen at all, of course. But it also speaks to their inherent misogyny. Because if you think that a woman could carry a pregnancy for 9 months and then walk into any office and say, kill it, whatever, I don't want it. You must think that woman needs to be controlled. And, they're just, look what happens if they have no control. They're just frankly evil. But I wish the Democrats would point out that, criminalizing abortion doesn't reduce the abortion rate. In fact, it goes down under Democratic policies. You could just look it up. It's math. It's, I wish the Democrats were better at that messaging. I pull my hair out thinking about it.
Yeah. Me too, what little I have left. 2 things. Well, we're going to go to a break now to bring back our radio listeners. But this week, despite the fact that Trump boasts about appointing the 3 justices who killed abortion access in this nation, he and Vance are still claiming that they will not push for a national abortion ban, which I don't believe for a minute. I think it's the first thing, one of the first things they do. But anyway, we're going to break. We'll be back with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon and more of Tara Devlin from TARABUSTER after these messages.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. And our guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, the host of the TARABUSTER podcast. Now, Tara, one of the interesting moments of the Democratic National Convention, I thought, was Bill Clinton's speech. And you pointed this out to me, and it sort of struck me at the time, but I didn't when I was watching his speech, but it didn't strike me. He said that in the years since the post-Cold War period, which I think he said was 51 years, he said that almost all the job growth in America and the United States had come under Democratic presidents. And I thought about it, and he's right. We had big surges of new jobs, especially under Joe Biden. But despite the fact that you can very easily link Democrats to new jobs and Republicans to recession, Democrats keep working under the assumption, voters seem to be in the assumption that Donald Trump would be good for the economy. How did that happen?
It's partly, I believe, the fault of the media. The mainstream media never corrects this. The fact that we were just talking about abortion too, the fact that they don't know that abortion rates don't go down when abortion is criminalized, and it goes down under Democratic policies, economic policies, and that they don't know that the economy does better under Democratic policies. It's just math. The GDP growth is more under Democratic policies. Private sector job growth. Unemployment rates have been lower under Democratic presidents. Inflation and interest rates have been averaged slightly lower during all Democratic administrations. Stock market returns. I know that Trump likes to boast about that. And in fact, Trump left office. I don't know if people, have some kind of mass delusion, but he left office with the worst jobs record since Herbert Hoover. And that is not factoring in the pandemic. They like to say, oh, that's because of COVID. No, take out COVID, and he still has the worst record. So all he did was funnel more money into the hands of the rich. That's what he did with the tax scam. The country had record income disparity and upward immobility, and he made it worse by making that income disparity and upward immobility wider. But Democrats the policies of Democrats consistently have been for working people. And now I'm not saying that Democrats are perfect. They're not. We're all swimming in this filthy, corroded pool of money and politics. That's a problem. I believe that's probably the root of all evil in this country,
Well, explain that, Tara.
Well, money and politics, when it's, you're going to dance with the people who brought you to the dance. So if you're if you're just operating you need to get on the phone every day and beg rich people to give you money, it's a little bit, it doesn't surprise me that, let's say, for example, the People's House, it's supposed to be the house closest to the people, now have more millionaires than ever. That would be great if there was a majority of Americans who were millionaires, but it never used to be that way. So, and that's why it's kind of a breath of fresh air to have Tim Walz. He's not a millionaire. He's a worker. He's a guy that doesn't even own, property. And of course, the Republicans are saying that's some kind of mark on him. But, he's really somebody that's worked for a living his entire life. But I just wish that the mainstream media, even when they do these polls, which drive me up a wall, everything is a poll, but that's just a reflection of the low information voter. You're polling people that don't have the proper facts, right? Oh, so who do you think? Because they poll people saying, oh, they think Trump's going to be better for the economy. Are you kidding me? And they don't correct it. How do you let these people think that this fallacy? How do you let that continue? The people should know that. The fact that they don't is a failure of the the mainstream media communications, right? But it makes you wonder. We used to have over 50 corporations that ran media companies. Now we have 6. So that was the consolidation of media. But yeah, it's all about money and politics. That's for sure, I think. But even still, the Democrats, they're not perfect, of course, but they will not. They do let they won't let you starve in the street. Let's put it that way. And the other thing that the Democrats need to do with this infrastructure bill that finally got passed, that I think it's over 70 or 80% of the money and the projects in the infrastructure bill is going to red states. And why is that? Why don't the Democrats talk about that? You think that the Republicans wouldn't? Because the Republicans do nothing for the people who vote for them. Except, they'll run a bathroom bill. They want to see your pee-pee in the bathroom or something, or they'll attack trans kids or gay people, all this performance art. But they'll let the infrastructure crumble. And that's what they've done. But that's why we have to go in after the fact and clean up their messes. But they don't, they'll just bash Democrats when, it's really the Republicans they should be worried about. I don't know. It's pretty, to me, it is really the fault of the media that doesn't inform
one thing
people.
That's interesting is you're right about the infrastructure bill. A lot of the money has gone, and that's for the very simple reason they need infrastructure more than anybody else. In fact, I get a big kick out of it after the infrastructure bill passed. All sorts of Republican members of Congress who voted against the infrastructure bill were, at ribbon cuttings and unveilings, talking about what they got this great thing for their district, even though they voted against the damn thing.
They voted against it. It's just unbelievable, and they just let them get away with it. It's crazy, really. They really should be ashamed of themselves, but obviously they have no shame, and they're confident that they're not going to hear that on Fox News or any other right-wing station. So because now we're living in these silos of information, and it's just a shame. The so-called liberal media, which this is the liberal media. You're looking at it, right? Us here, but the mainstream media isn't helping. It's sort of like they're enabling the delusion. The fact that just think about it, that the American people don't know that criminalizing abortion doesn't reduce the abortion rate. That every time a Republican calls himself pro-life, it should be mocked and scorned and laughed at as the joke that it is. But
well, it reminds me back in my college teaching days, and especially when I was teaching first year the intro to American government course, which basically freshmen and fresh women. I remember when I started teaching, I once casually mentioned the New Deal, and I got this big blank stare from the students. They had no talking about. So
right. Well, what about the Great Prosperity? That's another time in American history. I talk about the Great because it was the result of the New Deal. That was when the middle class was on the ascendancy, and people are like, what's that? They don't remember. The Republicans have been quite successful in they're really good at branding because they don't have anything else to boast about. Branding. What are they going to say? I mean, even with Trump. That's why he lies all the time because he's a sociopath. But still, what's he gonna boast about? He has the worst job record since Herbert Hoover. He killed 1 million Americans, left America a land of mass graves. I mean, what's he gonna really boast about? So
but you bring up a good point. Republicans do a much better job of branding issues and putting the emotion into issues, whereas Democrats, and this has always been my frustration as a Democratic consultant, are great at laundry lists. They say, we're going to do this, do that, or the other thing, without a whole lot of regard to finding out how they speak has no emotional impact on voters. That's something the party has to get a lot better at. Tara, I'm afraid we're out of time. I want to thank our guest today, Tara Devlin, the host of the TARABUSTER podcast. and her cat, who made a brief
He
appearance.
did? Oh, okay. I was wondering where it was.
Mica Soellner, who reports on Congress for Punchbowl News. And of course, our Crackerjack executive producer, Mark Grimaldi. We'll be back soon with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Until then, stand tall and stay strong in these troubled and turbulent times, and we'll all make this through this, and hopefully Kamala Harris will win, so I don't have to keep talking about Donald Trump next year.
What a beautiful day that would be, right?
Yeah. Anyway, all you have a good day. That's it for the show today. We'll be back soon.